Why seize Tumbleton? He dares me to rain fire down on a seat that raised my banner.
You, go down!
He's going to somehow win their support.
We must guard our intent quietly. We must presume these men hold allegiance only to themselves.
You river folk? Oh, I fucking hate river folk.
Our soldiers need to be paid, else there will be bedlam.
Rhaenyra is about to make the most dangerous decision of her entire reign, and if she gets it wrong, she could lose everything she has been fighting for. The trailer for House of the Dragon Season 3, Episode 4 just dropped, and it is showing us that Tumbleton is where this war is finally going to explode. We are also seeing Vhagar return, Daemon dealing with a financial crisis that could break the crown, and Aemond hiding out at Harrenhal with someone who might destroy Criston Cole from the inside. So with all of that on the table, I wanted to break down every second of this trailer and give you my theories on what I think is coming. Let's get into it. Here is House of the Dragon Season 3, Episode 4 trailer explained, and I am warning you now, this video is going to contain spoilers. The trailer opens with Tumbleton, and I think this small market town is about to become the most important location in the entire war. Rhaenyra herself asks why Ormond would seize Tumbleton, and she says he dares her to rain fire down on a seat that raised her banner. That single line tells me everything about the trap Ormond has set. Tumbleton is not just some random town he grabbed for strategic value. It is a town that pledged loyalty to Rhaenyra, and now Ormond is sitting inside it with his army, daring her to burn her own supporters just to get to him. I believe this is a deliberate move designed to break Rhaenyra's spirit before a single sword is even drawn. If she attacks and innocent people die, she loses the trust of the common folk who she desperately needs to keep her on the Iron Throne. If she does nothing, Ormond gets to sit there safely and buy himself more time to build up his forces. Either way, I think Ormond has cornered her into a decision where there is no clean outcome, and that is exactly why this is being built up as her biggest test yet. What makes this even trickier is the layout of Tumbleton itself. From what we have seen, it looks like a town built with narrow alleyways and tightly packed streets, almost like a maze. I don't think that is an accident. A town like that makes it incredibly hard to isolate Ormond without dragonfire tearing through homes and killing regular people in the process. I would not be surprised if this is the exact reason Ormond chose Tumbleton in the first place. He is not just hiding behind an army, he is hiding behind civilians. And that puts Rhaenyra in an impossible position. We also see soldiers moving through the streets, forcing people from their homes, which makes me think Ormond is trying to flip the loyalty of the town before Rhaenyra even has the chance to respond. If the people of Tumbleton feel abandoned or threatened by their own queen, they might start looking at the High Towers as the safer option, and that is a nightmare scenario for Rhaenyra's claim to the throne. Then we get to the moment everyone has been waiting for, and that is the return of Vhagar. I think this is going to be one of the most important reveals of the entire season. Aemond has been quiet for a while now, and with Vhagar coming back into the picture, I believe we are about to see him step out of the shadows in a much bigger way. Vhagar is the oldest and most dangerous dragon left in Westeros, and if Aemond is finally ready to use her at full force, that changes the entire balance of power in this war. I think Rhaenyra's side has been operating under the assumption that Aemond has been sidelined, but this trailer is telling us that assumption is about to blow up in her face. We also get a look at Aegon and Larys, and Larys tells Aegon that he must presume these men hold allegiance only to themselves. I think this line is incredibly important because it shows us that Aegon and Larys are still operating under disguises, still trying to survive without revealing who they really are. Larys has always been someone who thrives on secrets and manipulation, and I believe he is coaching Aegon to trust absolutely no one on their journey because the wrong person finding out who Aegon is could get them both killed. I also think this ties back into the idea that Aegon is a broken and dangerous version of himself right now. He has lost his throne, lost his dragon, and lost his confidence, and I would not be surprised if this journey ends up either rebuilding him into someone stronger or pushing him toward something much darker. Daemon's storyline is also heating up, and we hear him say that the soldiers need to be paid or else there will be bedlam. This is such a huge problem because Rhaenyra's entire claim depends on people believing she can actually run a kingdom, not just win battles. I think this financial crisis is going to be just as dangerous to her reign as anything happening on the battlefield. An unpaid army is an army that stops trusting its leaders, and if Daemon cannot solve this quickly, I believe we could see cracks forming within her own ranks long before Ormond's forces even reach the gates. Tumbleton is about to burn, and I think the next stretch of this trailer makes that painfully clear. We then move over to Harrenhal, and this is where things get really interesting. Gawain Hightower and his men arrive there searching for Prince Aemond, and they say to Alice Rivers that they seek the prince, and if she knows where he is, she should be forthcoming. Now, I think this moment is loaded with tension because Alice is not someone who scares easily, and I believe she already knows exactly where Aemond is hiding. What catches my attention here is that strange, almost monstrous sound playing in the background as this threat is being made. I think that sound is a hint that something dark and supernatural is about to happen to Gawain and his men. And I would not be surprised if they end up going through the same terrifying ordeal that Daemon experienced when he first stepped foot inside Harrenhal. Alice responds with a simple, "Oh my," and to me, that reaction tells us she is not remotely intimidated by these men. If anything, I think she finds this whole situation almost amusing, like she already knows she has the upper hand before the conversation even started. Here's what makes this so frustrating to watch, though. Alice has no idea that Rhaenyra is willing to offer her Harrenhal in exchange for Aemond. That is the exact thing Alice has wanted this entire time, and she is sitting right on top of the answer without even realizing it. I believe this creates a tragic kind of irony, because instead of taking the deal that could hand her real power, I think she's going to end up protecting Aemond and losing out on the one thing she has always desired. That said, I do not think she's going to let Gawain and Criston Cole off easy. I believe she still has every intention of toying with them, possibly even using whatever twisted magic she commands to punish them for coming into her domain with threats. My theory is that she has already struck some kind of arrangement with Aemond, healing him in exchange for shelter and protection, which would explain exactly why he has been missing from the story for so long. He has not been defeated or lost, he has been recovering, and I think this trailer is building toward the moment where he reveals himself fully healed and ready to fight again. From there, the trailer shifts back to Tumbleton. We see Ormond Hightower walking through the town with two of his soldiers, and one of them appears to be wounded. I think this small detail tells us a lot because it shows that Ormond's men are not just marching in peacefully, they are facing resistance, and that resistance is being crushed without hesitation. Ormond's voice then plays over the scene, and he says that his purpose is to restore the rightful line to the Iron Throne. I believe Ormond genuinely sees himself as a man on a righteous mission, not a villain. In his mind, the Hightowers are the true bloodline that deserves the throne, and I think that is exactly why he orchestrated the entire decoy plan with the fake Darren. If the real Darren had died, Ormond would have lost his justification to keep fighting, so keeping him alive and hidden was never about mercy, it was about keeping his own cause alive. I think this makes Ormond one of the most dangerous kinds of enemies, because he is not driven by greed or bloodlust, he is driven by conviction, and men like that rarely stop until they are physically destroyed. We then get a shot of a dragon flying out of Tumbleton, and I believe this is Tessarion, since we know that Darren's dragon has remained under Ormond's control ever since the devastating events at the end of the previous episode. Ormond closes out the trailer by declaring that it is the will of the gods right as this dragon lands in Tumbleton. I think this line is incredibly chilling because it shows just how far Ormond has convinced himself that everything he is doing is justified by fate itself. We also see him staring off into the distance with an orange glow lighting up the scene and dragon fire clearly being released somewhere off camera. I believe this confirms that Ormond is not holding back anymore, and whoever is caught in that fire is about to experience the true cost of standing against him. What I find genuinely fascinating here is comparing how Ormond and Rhaenyra viewed the power of dragons. Ormond is fully embracing Dragonfire as a tool of dominance, almost treating himself like a god because he now commands one. I think this directly goes against what Viserys always warned, that dragons are a power no man should ever trifle with carelessly. Rhaenyra, on the other hand, has been trying to understand dragons through a different lens, seeing them as sacred magic born from darkness, something tied closely to faith and the loyalty of the people. I believe this contrast is going to be one of the biggest emotional threads of this episode. Will Rhaenyra hold on to that careful, respectful approach, or will Ormond's brutality finally push her into using dragonfire the same reckless way her enemies are using it? I think that decision is going to define not just this episode, but possibly the entire direction of the war moving forward. With Tumbleton now caught in the middle of this brewing storm, I think the final stretch of this trailer is where everything starts pointing toward all-out war. This next episode looks like it is going to be a massive shift in tone compared to the previous one. Episode 3 leaned heavily into quiet political tension and deception. But I believe episode 4 is going to start laying the groundwork for something much bigger, possibly even setting up what could be a devastating mid-season battle. I think the writers are using this episode to plant every single piece needed for Tumbleton to erupt into full-scale war, and once that happens, I do not think there is any turning back for either side. One thing I keep coming back to is Rhaenyra's position heading into this episode. She has spent the last few episodes trying to hold her council together, manage diplomatic pressure, and keep the common people on her side, but I think Tumbleton is going to be the moment where all of that starts falling apart at once. If innocent people in Tumbleton are harmed or killed while she hesitates, I believe that could permanently damage how the small folk view her leadership. At the same time, if she chooses not to act, I think Ormond gains exactly what he wants: more time to strengthen his hold and continue building momentum for the Hightower cause. I genuinely believe this is designed to be a lose-lose situation for her, and how she navigates it is going to say a lot about what kind of ruler she is becoming under pressure. I also think Daemon's financial crisis is going to tie directly into this conflict in a way people are not expecting. An army that is not being paid is an army that starts questioning its loyalty, and I believe that instability is going to become a serious problem the longer this war drags on. If soldiers start feeling abandoned or unsupported, I would not be surprised if we start seeing cracks form within Rhaenyra's ranks, maybe even desertions or open dissent among men who no longer feel like fighting for a cause that cannot even pay them. I think this financial pressure is just as dangerous as anything happening on the battlefield, because a war cannot be won with dragons alone if the men behind those dragons stop believing in the fight. Then there is Aemond, and I think his return is going to be the single biggest wild card of this episode. With Vhagar seemingly back in play and Alice Rivers possibly healing him in secret, I believe we are building toward a moment where Aemond steps back into the war fully recovered and far more dangerous than before. I think people have underestimated just how much of a threat he still is, and I would not be surprised if his reappearance completely shifts momentum in favor of the Greens. If Aemond returns at full strength while Rhaenyra is still distracted by Tumbleton and her financial troubles, I think the timing could not be worse for her side. Aegon and Larys also remain a storyline I am watching closely. I believe their journey towards safety is only going to get more dangerous the further they travel, especially with tensions already rising against outsiders like we saw with that hostile reaction toward Riverfolk. I think Aegon is going to be forced into situations where he has to make choices that either rebuild his confidence or break him down even further. Given how broken he has been since losing his throne and his dragon, I believe this journey is setting up a turning point for his character, one that could go either way depending on how the writers choose to handle his arc from here. Bringing everything together, I think this episode is going to feel like the moment the entire season shifts gears. Up until now, we have had politics, manipulation, and quiet maneuvering, but I believe Tumbleton is where the war stops being subtle and starts becoming brutal. I think we are going to see the first real large-scale confrontation of the season here, and depending on how Rhaenyra handles Ormond's trap, this could either strengthen her claim to the throne or badly damage it. I also believe this episode is going to be remembered as the moment several major character arcs finally start converging Aemon's return, Aegon's transformation, Daemon's growing desperation, and Rhaenyra's impossible choice all colliding at once. Being the halfway point of the season, I think the writers are using this episode to raise the stakes as high as possible before we head into the back half of the story. And honestly, I do not think there has been a more important episode to watch closely than this one so far. I am incredibly excited to see how this plays out, and I believe this is going to be one of the most talked about episodes of the entire season.